Hey, Composing Gloves here, and today we're going to be talking about humanizing a beat. So you've programmed in some music, but you want to make it sound slightly more real. There's one hard truth, and it is more expensive tools will tend to sound more real. But I have a beat here, and there are elements of it like the drum loop, obviously not supposed to sound real. But the orchestra behind it is obviously supposed to sound very real. And I think I did a pretty darn good job. And the name of the game here is details. Just get the details. If you get the details, you can sound really, really real with the correct tools. So here I've got, this is my version of Finale from the game Undertale. And so I'll play it for you real quick. And there might be sample pops and clicks. Things might not load. That's just because it's playing back in real time. But here you go. So there you have it. I think the orchestra sounds freaking spot on. Like that sounds like real brass players just blowing their brains out, having a good old time playing a crazy melody. Like that's what it sounds like to me. The drums, obviously it's a drum and bass feel. I mean, the tempo's outrageous. So yeah, so let's talk about what makes this thing sound so real. So the first one is, it is real. They are expensive tools. Like the brass sounds you're hearing were like $500. So if you're wondering what those are, those come from the Spitfire Brass ensemble. Symphonic brass, it's a thing, they compiled all their old brass libraries into one library. And so you like buy it as a whole thing now. And what's some of the things when you get a tool like this, if you've never owned a tool like this, is you get a whole load of articulations. You get true round robin. And round robin just means if you were to play a note, if you were to hit a key on a keyboard, it will play the note. But if you hit a key again, it will play the exact same thing. And so round robin will play a new recorded version of that note. Because if a player were to replay the exact same thing twice, they would be subtly different than the first time. And so we need to emulate this. And so there's all sorts of methods with round robins, which are multiple recordings of the same thing. That way you can get that subtle nuance. So that's part of the deal that I have going on in here. I'm also switching articulations to create dynamic phrases. So, you know, if I wanted a phrase to go wump, bum, bum, I'm going to need a slur to that wump. And then I'm going to need staccatos. And then I want my staccatos to be dynamic. So dun, 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 dun. And I want them to sound good. So I need multiple dynamic levels. I need the sample recorded at a soft level and then at a loud level. And this library is actually apparently so high profile, you can't get into the back engine. It's like been shut down. Like I can't get to it. So there's all these benefits that come from the realism captured in a library of this caliber. But let's just say there's still tons of stuff you can do without a library of this caliber. And just because you have one doesn't mean it's going to sound good. You have to know how to use it first. Even though it will still probably sound, it's a little like, it still probably sound good even without you knowing a whole lot about what you're doing. So what it is you notice here that there's really only a few things you can really do. The one is you just need to be a good songwriter, a good arranger. You need to understand when you should automate some vibrato in, right? So you go like da na 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 na, like something like that. I didn't do that in this piece because obviously it's a very aggressive in your face, large brass sound piece. But just being a good songwriter goes a really long way towards having realism. But then there's those subtle details that are humanistic in nature that you can still capture regardless of what you're working with. One of them is volume. So you see all these little lines here. That's volume automation. That's actually automation. It doesn't have to be volume. It could be anything. This is called events. They're like automation clips like this, only they're recorded into the clip, or you can edit them in the clip by going in here, and you see I have all these controls. If you've never used these, because I used FL for a while, but before I got into orchestral composition in FL, I was like, what is this black magic? You can actually control things by going to edit events in piano roll. And so, wow, my chest just got all woo. But anyways, that's what's going on there. So I'm using velocity to control initial volume, but to control volume over time, I'm using these controls in here. And sometimes I'm controlling things that are specific. Like a lot of the Spitfire stuff has special volume scripts written so that things flow extra smooth. A lot of stuff in Contact is that way. So part of it's the tools, but you see we can also do these subtle volume changes. If we look here too, you can also do very subtle movements of the notes. So let's say, oh, these are all land at the same point, so I'll move it very subtly. Now, in an expensive library, they'll already be recorded so that they do this on their own. And there's usually an ability to change this. So like, for example, if you own Complete, you probably own the string sections I'm using, which are the Session Strings Pro. Like you should if you own Complete. And we have all these articulations. We'll talk about these in a second. They've got round robin and the whole 9 yards. But if we go over to, usually there is a command that can tell you a range to put your samples in, and also if they should play them slightly before or behind the beat. This can also be controlled artificially with an envelope with a randomization. Let me show you what I mean. Let's go to the brass. I believe Spitfire has it. So we come in here and we go to the, what page do I want to go to? Expression speed. Sometimes they have a control called tightness, and it refers to that, how closely it aligns. But you could do it artificially. There's a lot of tools. You can select everything, and there should be a humanizing tool. I hardly ever use it. I almost always do it by hand. But you can come in, and there'll be a tool that allows you to randomize the position of the notes. It escapes my mind right now, but you can go ahead and move them. But I prefer to do it by hand because if you're going to do something that's like funky, you're going to want them to be maybe slightly ahead or behind, but not both. And so you're going to want controls, and oftentimes you don't need to do it to every note. You only need to do it between fundamental relationships. So for example, if you were to just move the kick and the snare, that could have a huge impact on the feel of the beat instead of the hi-hat, because those are the things that you generally derive the general feel of a beat from, is the relationship between the kick and the snare. So you spend your time working on those, and then you can move with a hi-hat a little bit, but it's slightly less important in order of hierarchy. Not that it's not important. I didn't say that. It's just less important. So you have volume, you have these options. Now, another tool, if you have a tool that can do multiple articulations, meaning it can play staccato and it can play legato, well, then we can take advantage of that. So for example, here in the intro, my brass are increasing in volume, and then I have the string section, and they are doing this. And you see there are different colored notes. That has to do with BRSO, Articulate. It's the plugin I'm using to play this stuff. It's covered in my free VST. I usually put a link to that in the description, free VST's playlist. So you can go check it out. It allows you to call different sets of articulations with just a, with MIDI colors. See, instead of having to put down key switches, which is like so much better. It's like a billion times better. Like if you are cheating yourself if you're doing the other way. But anyways, I have this line. I'll solo it for you and show you what I mean. So here I've got this. Whoops, wrong one. I'll turn them both on. So you see here, I have these legato, da-na-na-na-na. And if I go to the note velocity, you see that the velocities are all over the place. I picked out each one because, you know, if a real player is going to play this, they're going to be like, dun, 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 dun. Like, they're going to emphasize different parts. And I, being the arranger, and in this case, the producer, and pretty much the players too, and the idea that I'm telling them exactly what I want them to do. I can be very specific and shape phrases the way I want them to sound. So I'm able to come in here and do this. And this is actually pretty fun because you can experiment with different ideas and see where placing the emphasis, how that'll affect the phrase. Now, you might be going, wow, these legato samples are really loud, because these are the legato ones. So you see that, no. And you might be going, why are those so much louder? And the answer is, they're not loud. If you listen with your ears and not look with your eyes, you'll be like, oh, those are like the same volume. They're just softer recordings. So here, these just sound louder. So I have them generally lower in volume. So that's what's going on there. And you'll hear also the strings in the background coming in and out. That's the volume automation, makes it sound real. Something else that adds realism is adding in a lot of details. So at the beginning, there's a lot going on. It doesn't look like there's a lot, but I head off with a Celestia, if I find it, or Celestia, however you say it. So that already is like, there's a lot, like, whoa, we've got harmony introduced, we've got rhythm introduced, we've got a theme going. Like we've already been bombarded with like 5 or 6 things. And so I like 3 or 4 things. And so it's like, oh, okay. But I have more going on. I begin to add in subtle details. If I turn on a couple more instruments here. And let's see what else is going on here. So there's a harp there. Let's turn the harp on. So you see, it's like do 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 do. This kind of stuff, it takes a while to write out. Like, yeah, it does. And some people are really intense. They do not write with any sort of a snap setting. They write with no snap setting, and they place all notes so that while they're composing, every single note is slightly off, and that gives it that human element. And then you slightly move the notes. You notice here I gave great attention to velocity. This is very, very soft. It's just those things that come in and out, like, wow. And there was a part with some plucks. Can't remember where though. This is an interesting section right here. I take the tremolo, I believe is what I do here. I can't remember what that lighter setting is. Maybe it's nothing. I can't remember. But yeah. Wow, that was self-defeating. I can't remember what I did there, so I can't explain it to you. I'm sorry. But you get the idea. We have a lot of elements coming in. They're very subtle. They come in, they come out. It's all musical. We've got these round robins. Like we've got the tools. Sometimes the tools is unfortunately the battle. And then you get really good at just doing these small details, and it really begins to come together into something that is very cool. Let's take a look at the brass and this B section that I have going on. So at the beginning, the brass is just growing. Oh, that's another thing I left out is there's all sorts of drums. There's drums everywhere. There's different kinds of drums. There's kick drums. There's bass drums. There, you can usually tell because they're sitting around like that. There's one somewhere along this line here, just sitting there. And this has an articulation change over here. That's what that is. So you see, just details. But if we come over to this section over here, this was pretty cool. So I have this transition. And that's where I have the drums respond. Let's see. Yeah, you can hear them let go of their breath. It's cool. So we have a timpani, a gong, a chime, and a rise and hit, as well as a bass drum. And that was accomplished by a volume automation. So things of that nature that's how you do them. And so I'm actually using the Action Strikes ensemble here. Bum, 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 bum. See, there's a whole bunch in here. So whenever I'm doing a heavy orchestral project, I like to separate my contact instances out. These are always super hefty though, on my CPU if I have it all running and I have them open. So I have to be kind of careful. So okay, we have that going on. There's also a cool choir that it just fits nicely in the background as a pad. And let's find out where that's at. There was a sample pop there, but you get the idea. We're going through here, and now you notice dun dun dun, and they get louder, and some of them even have articulation changes there. And when you have a whole bunch of brass playing at the same time, one articulation change will change the character of the ensemble instead of like a dramatic change. It won't be like bum dun or like, I don't know, a string going to a staccato. It's like that's pretty like obvious. But when you have a whole bunch of strings playing and some go like staccato, some go pizzicato, it becomes this blend of the two, and it's less obvious what happened. It's more of a subtle texture change. So you have options like that available to yourself all over the map. But anyways, that's some of the things on a composition where I'm really focusing on details and sitting down and looking at subtle things. And you notice here when I talked about transitions being weak or strong, these are like in the background. Like they serve to give the listener like a thump when we hit the section. Like, so they play a much more integrated role than the ones in that other track that I showed you. I was like, these are sort of weaker transitions. These ones are much more powerful, and they're more suited to this type of role. Like this is what is expected, and they're the sounds that are expected, and they play the role of the transition that also happens musically. Like everything's just great right here. I like the transitions. I like this track a lot. But anyways, yes, if you have any questions about this, let me know. If you're looking for libraries, honestly, I'm going to say this because someone's going to ask me, what libraries are you using? I'm using Spitfire stuff. So a bunch of Spitfire, and then everything else is going to be stuff from Complete. So Session Strings Pro and the Contact Factory library. And that's pretty much all I'm using. Like all this stuff besides Action Strikes. I use Action Strikes a lot too. It's all going to be from there. Every now and then, yeah, you'll see a heaviosity instrument like a gong, but it's so like varied and like, it take me, I don't want to sit there and like write out everything that I used, but you get the idea. Mostly, if you own Complete, you should have all this stuff except for the Spitfire stuff. If you have any questions, let me know. Besides that question, subscribe and have a blessed day.
It is still my conviction, as I wrote in 1947, the compelling necessities of the moment leave us no alternative to the maintenance of real and respectable strength.